In this project, we're going to create a to-do list using HTML, Tailwind CSS, and of course, just a little bit of JavaScript because we did the JavaScript in the previous videos. In which previous videos? Well, in those where we first created exactly the same project using HTML, CSS, regular CSS, and JavaScript. Then we created exactly the same project using Bootstrap. And now, there's our HTML project. Then there's the Bootstrap project. And at the end, we are also having our Tailwind CSS project. Now again, we can add items with validation. So new item, add it to the list. We can check items, we can uncheck items. We can edit item like me or the video and edit. You can see also the button description changes here, and we can delete individual items like new item. We're going to delete this and an alert will appear. We can also clear the entire list. Do that. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this being said, the entire code is down in the video description. Also the code for the previous projects where you will need this JavaScript file right here. So let's get started with our project. Okay, so let's create a new file, new index. I'm going to do a index and capital T for Tailwind and .html. Okay, let's start with a boilerplate. Shift and 1. That's going to give you that exclamation mark. Call this to-do list with Tailwind. It's smaller. And let's start up with a regular div. We're just going to write for now, before we add the Tailwind CSS CDN to this. So just write in here, write value for item name. Okay, so let's hit save. Right click, open it with live server. And there it is. Now I'm not going to install Tailwind CSS, which is actually recommended for production builds. We're just going to play around with Tailwind CSS using the CDN. You know, to get it, we're going to go to tailwindcss.com, get started, and from here we're going to go to play CDN. Just copy this little script tag from up here. That's all. Insert it, exactly as you see in the example there, up here in your head, and you're good to go. These configuration files you don't need. Also, you don't need this. So far and so on. So that's it. We can close this one up. You should be good to go. Let's verify this guy. You can already see also if I comment this out, you can see that the font family changing here. Also, let me just 150 is enough. Now let's go ahead and for this, let's comment it back in. For this div, we're actually going to pack it into another div. We're going to play around with this. First things first, the general div will have the class of container. Then we're going to add a container-md for a medium size, then a margin on the x-axis of auto, then a padding on the x-axis of 2. Then we're going to display everything that is in here in a flex direction, going to flex in a column direction, so flex-col, and we're going to take up the entire width, so w/full of the container. Also, we're going to take the items and center them using item center, and then margin top 3 rem, and there we go. Everything is good for our next step, which is to style this little file. Now this is going to be our feedback. As you saw in the finished project, up here we're going to have a feedback. This will contain whatever feedback we're going to get. If it's a alert of error or a successful alert or whatever we have, we're going to display it up here. So let's give this a class of feedback. So class, then feedback. Now this feedback is extremely important because we are going to grab onto this in JavaScript. Then we're going to use alert for a second class. Now let's play around with it. First things first, we're going to, although we won't see it, so let me give it a bg red and 100 with 300 so we can later see something. I'm going to delete this bg red, but for now let's just have it in there. And now let's increase its height h16. Okay, now I'm going to give it a couple of borders, so round up the borders using rounded-md, then width-full. And again, we're going to justify content. We're going to display everything as flex. We're going to align items to center, so item center. Then justify the content to center, so center, justify center. Padding on the x-axis of 2. And we're going to increase the font to a width of medium. Okay, and we should see it right here. Perfect. Now I'm going to take out this bg red, and there we go. So this background red was just in order for us to see what we're styling. We're going to change the background depending on what kind of alert that is. but we're going to use JavaScript for this. Now, next up, we're going to create our form. So let's type in here comment of form. And for our form, let's create a form tag. Let's delete the action, and we're going to add here a ID of item and form. Let's also add here a couple of classes of margin on the y-axis of 3 and a full width also for the form. Now let's add a bit of content to the form. First, we're going to have this little title. It's going to be this one. Let's add a h3 with the class of text, and let's increase the text size of XL and 2 times, so 2 times XL. Then dot, we want whatever we type in here to be capitalized. So first letter will be a capital letter. For this, we're going to use the class of capitalize. Then it's going to add a margin bottom of 4, then a dot text center, and we should be good to go, excepting we need to add a text. So just going to type in here to list. Actually, the list will live. Okay, so I didn't use capital letters, but as you can see here, capitalize, the class of capitalize, it's doing its thing. Now for our inputs, we're going to create a general div, the class of flex, and then gap, we're going to add a gap of 2. Now for our input, and it's going to be the type of text. Then we're going to add a placeholder of name, ... There we go, there's our input. Let's also give it a ID. We can grab onto this input later on, item and input. And now let's style it. So let's go ahead, classes, class of capitalized again. Then let's add a border. Let's change the color of the border by using border dash green and 700. Let's round up the border, so rounded dash MD. Let's also change the text color that we're typing here to text green and 700, and a padding on the x-axis of 2 and padding on the y-axis of 1. Okay, let's assign it to a width of full, and there we go. Next up, we're going to have a button. So right over here, we're going to have a button. Now, the type of the button this time will be the type of submit in order for it to use it to submit the form. We're also going to add to this a ID of add item. We're going to grab onto this later on using JavaScript. And then classes or class. But we are adding multiple classes. So yes, there are classes. So use the property of class. And let's start out by adding border, then border green and 700, then text dash green 700. Let's also add a bit of a text so we can see what we're styling here. So add item. Okay. Now, if we're hovering over the border, so let's type in here hover, then the background should be a green and 800. I'm sorry, 700. So basically, we're going to have something like this, a border background, PG. Sorry. Oh, something like this. And then let's also change the text. So hover, and the text should be then white. Okay. Now let's take care of the corners here by typing rounded and MD. Then for our effect, let's add a transition, just a simple transition, and this should already make it a bit smoother. Now let's add padding on the x-axis and padding on the y-axis. Actually, let's increase the padding. Padding on the y-axis should be 2, and on the x-axis should be 4. Let's increase the font to a font and medium, and let's add a shadow to the button of MD. Perfect. There we go, the button is good to go. Now we're going to move after our form, and right after that we're going to create a div where we're going to nest our item list. So first of all, we're going to have a dot item dash container, then a width of full, and then a text center. Okay, within here we're going to have another div with a class of item and a list and a margin on the y-axis of 5. Now this is where all of our items will live. So I'm going to create one item, and then we're going to copy that item into JavaScript because they're actually going to be added using JavaScript. But before we do that, let's finish this up with a button. And actually, we're going to use the same button as we have here. So let's just copy this button, paste it after our item list. The type of this button will be button, so regular button. Also, if you don't type in any kind of type, then it's just going to stay button. And we're also missing the closing tag of the button. So this is not going to be add, but it's going to be clear items. It's going to clear all of the items. So it's kind of the same button, but it's going to have the ID of clear and instead of items, list. Okay, last but not least, let's also include our script tag here, script of main.js, which is this file here. Of course, you can copy everything from the blog post, which is down in the description. Now, let's finish up our item style here. I'm going to close up the left part. So one single item will be created by using the class of item, then flex, then justify center, then a margin to the bottom of 3. Sorry about that, a margin on the y-axis of 3. Then let's add a border, but only to the bottom. And this border will be border dash B and dash green and then 500. Basically, you can select only specific borders. So hit save. We don't have any kind of content, but we can see the border right here. We're not done with our classes. We also need a padding to the border to the bottom of 1. Now let's add something in there. First things first, we're going to have a div with the class of flex and then gap, and we're actually building now this part, and then this is separate. So where the number and the name of the item will be nested will be in a different container than where the actions or item icons will be nested. So we're going to have here the item index and then the item name. Then we're going to have for our items a couple of icons, which will be to check the item, to edit the item, and then to delete the item. So let's move back to our project. So gap of 1, then dot items and center. Close it up, and there we go. So within this div, we're going to nest our h6, which is going to have the class of item and index. This is going to have a border, and that border will be border dash green and dash 500. Then it's going to be rounded, then a padding of 1, all around padding. Okay, so we'll type in here 1, see this little fellow. After our h6, after our item index, we're going to have the item name. For this, we're going to use the paragraph tag and then the class of item dash name and then capitalize. That's it. We're just going to have item name here. Now moving on, we need our icons. So let's step out of this div and create another div with the class of item dash icons. Within here, let's create a I. Now we're going to use Font Awesome. So let's go ahead and search for Font Awesome CDN. Font Awesome and CDN. I'm going to throw you to cdnjs.com. And from here, you can just copy the link tag, go to HTML, go up in your header, and you can insert it before the script tag. And there we go. Hit save, and you should have Font Awesome now working. So let's test it. Go down here in our list, in our item. Just get an icon tag with the class of FAR, then dot FA dash check dash circle, then cursor dash pointer, and then complete it or complete dash item and margin on the x-axis of 2 and dot item dash icon. Okay, now these classes will be repetitive. You should already see this little check mark. Oh, the color is wrong, so let's add a text green and not 700 but 500. Okay, for our next one, I'm just going to copy this. Instead of FA check circle, we're going to replace this with FA edit. Save. You should always see an edit sign there. Now be careful to replace this completed with edit item and just remove this text green. But before that, let's just copy this, paste it one more time in. Now delete text green. Go down here, instead of edit, FA edit, we're going to have times dash circle. Then instead of edit, we're going to have delete item. Instead of text green, we're going to have text red, also 500. And there we go. Let's have our little fellows here. Now up here where you have your item, I misspelled here. This should be justify between. Okay, that's much better. And also items and center. Perfect. Going to align the items to the center, as you can see here. Now this is one item. So I'm going to take this div class of item, and now you need to open up your JavaScript. And well, first things first, we're going to do here a little check. So let me explain the logic. First, we have here our variables. Also, you can go ahead and watch the JavaScript part of the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript project that we did with this to-do list. So we have here our variables. Just console log them here. We have to comment this one out. Then we're grabbing onto the Bootstrap CDM from the header. In our case, we need another one because depending on if this project is a Bootstrap, a regular HTML, CSS, or a Tailwind CSS project, so depending on those factors, the JavaScript will behave differently. Meaning, we're going to create here another one, const, another variable. We're going to call this Tailwind CSS. Now we're going to go to the document dot head and dot query selector, and we're going to search for the script tag. So script open and close square brackets, then source is equal to, well, it should be equal to single quotations, https column // then cdn.tailwind.css.com. Simple as that. Meaning we just grab down from our HTML to this little script tag. Now, if this little script tag exists, then the JavaScript should do something different than it does when it has a Bootstrap link or a Bootstrap CDN. Now, this is going to take effect in our get list. For example, down here before our else statement, also missing a return. In our get list, we're going to scroll down here. We have this else is going to return the regular project, regular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript project, the item, but not what we want. We want actually check if this is now a Tailwind project. So we're going to do here a else and if, open and close parentheses, open and close curly brackets, and we're going to check now if Tailwind CSS exists. If this exists, I'm going to go in here. You could just copy everything that is in this else statement right here, paste it in here. So item list, we're grabbing onto this element at the top with variables, and we're going to insert adjacent HTML before and we're going to go now to our HTML file back and copy our entire div here as the item and replace it. Remember here in our else if, replace it within here. Maintain these two backticks. So let's hit save. Let's go ahead and comment it out from here. And this is how we're going to add a new item. Now we want to handle the item down here, then scroll down to add item to list. So we have a button is add btn, which is coming from up here from add btn, add item ID, which is then coming from, I just comment it out. Here we go, add item. Oh, that's ab, not ab, add. What am I doing? So add item. So when we're going to click this add item, you can always see here a please enter valid value as an error occurring, meaning we need to add here item and then click on add item and you should see the item down here. Now, please check if you typed this incorrectly. Go back to the head. So we should have, I'm just going to copy it, this little fellow in here. Remember, instead of double quotes, you should have single quotes. Okay, so there's our item that we just added. Now we want this to take effect using Tailwind CSS. So we're going to change this to a let and redefine Bootstrap here with Bootstrap and is equal to false. Now this should turn Tailwind CSS to true and then obviously give us the style for Tailwind CSS. So let's move on now to handle our items. And handle items is down here. So search for handle items. You can also do a command F and handle items, capital I. Now within this function, we're going to style the properties that the items have. So we can check items, edit items, and delete items, of course. Now your first thing that you're going to see is we just selected the index and the name of the item. Then we added the condition that if it's a Bootstrap element, then item should toggle these classes. Now let's see what we can do if it is a else if it is a Tailwind CSS element. So this style is applied. First we're going to item name and let's change the class list of this to toggle the class of line through. Basically, if I'm going to click this check button, then it should. Next, let's copy this. Let's take the item name and toggle the class list to text, the color of slate, and 400. Then the index, I'm copy the very first one, change this to border dash success and subtle. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean green and 500. Getting confused with Bootstrap and Tailwind CSS. And then the index, and last but not least, the item index should have a text, slate, and 400. Sorry about that. Now let's go down. So this was the completed event. Now let's go to edit, and right after that is delete. Right here, let's add the else and return. Okay, let's scroll down, get list, and then after get list, we're going to now try out to add an item. So new item, add it, and one last thing, we now need to go up in our Tailwind CSS, and when we're adding these items, we need to replace now, because actually looping over our items. So items do and the item, we now need to replace it just as we have it here. Now Bootstrap, we need to replace number 1 with a $ and index, and also the item name, which is down here, with a $ and item itself, basically adding the items. Item, new item, and second item, third item, whatever. Okay, now checking it works, editing it works. It's going to be sent here, edit item. Okay, deleting also works. Refresh this. This should be all saved to local storage. Now, what we're missing here is these alerts. So let's go down where we had our send feedback. We're missing here one type of feedback. So I'm just going to create here else if, open and close parenthesis, open and close curly brackets. Of course, we're going to type in here our Tailwind CSS. And if Tailwind CSS is true, first things first, I'm going to copy our Bootstrap example, paste it in here. Now, here where we have class lists, we are going to add multiple classes. So first, I'm going to add before these backticks a class of border, then comma. We're going to have a bg dash, the class name that's going to be passed into this function, then dash and 100, comma, backticks, and now we're going to add another class. It's going to copy this, paste it in here, and add text, and then 700. Now, if these classes are added, they also need to be removed when we're finished with our feedback. So for now, we're just going to see working because comma in here instead of here. Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, please add enter valid value. Let's add here new item. Okay, and this is red, which we don't want. It should also disappear. So let's change down here. We're going to remove this class. Actually, we can just copy this and add it here in our remove. So paste it in here, replace it. Okay, let's try this again. Add value, not good. Then alert, edit. There we go. A successful alert. And then we're going to check an item, item checked, uncheck it, no alert, delete it, red alert, and delete all of the items. Boom. There we go. That's it for the project. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a thumbs up. Like, share, and subscribe. My name is Norbert BM, bringing you the best web development projects on the internet. Take care, everybody. Catch you next time. Happy coding. Bye-bye.